Hi everyone, in this tutorial, I'll demonstrate how to create a diorama style world design in Clip Studio Paint, along with some of the most helpful tools and features you can use in Clip Studio Paint to speed up your workflow. You can download the isometric grid and ruler from Clip Studio Assets. I have put the link in the description below. You can search for them. After you have downloaded it, you can go to Window, Material, and drag the grid first, the isometric grid. And you can use Object tool to select the grid or hold Control to select the grid, and you can change the density of the isometric grid or the number of division. And to make this less prominent, you can change the layer color, and you can also reduce the opacity, right? So this is more comfortable to draw, less distracting. And now you can drag the isometric ruler, and since there is no vanishing point, you actually can just move this isometric ruler out of your sight. It doesn't matter because all the line, they are parallel to each other, so you can just drag it out of your sight and turn on the snap to special ruler, and you can just draw on this isometric grid. Now I want to show you 4 ways that you can draw faster or more efficient in Clip Studio Paint. This only works in vector layer. You cannot do this in raster layer. So click this icon and create a new vector layer, and let me delete the line first. And in vector layer, for every single line you draw, you can manipulate them. If you hold Control and select any line, you can move the direction or you can change the scale. So this isn't really helpful, because why not just redraw the line? So here is the first way you can draw faster. So instead of using pen tool, you can go to Figure, this icon, and use straight line and curve subtool to draw instead. Because if you draw a box, you can see if you hold Control and you select the line, it only creates 2 control points from one end to the other end, and you can manipulate it very easily because it only has 2 points. And if you use this curve tool and you draw, you can adjust the curvature. You can always come back to this line and adjust. If you work on raster layer, you have to erase it, but if you use curve and straight line subtool, you can always adjust it. So this is very helpful. Most of the times I only use straight line or curve subtool to draw in isometric or even perspective drawing. So you can go to File, Shortcut Settings, and you can assign a shortcut key for this too, because they are really convenient. The second way you can draw faster is to use vector eraser. So when you use eraser tool, you have to activate vector eraser. If you cannot see this option, click this wrench icon and go to erase section and make these 3 options visible. Bring them to your tool property palette. And if you use the middle one, which most of the times I only use the middle one, erase up to intersection, you can erase these excess lines very easily. And if you want to erase the whole line, you can erase twice right? You can erase multiple times to get rid of the whole line, or you can click the third icon to erase the whole line easily. If you use straight line tool and vector eraser, you can just draw very quickly and easily, right? Something like this, right? You don't have to worry about connecting the line properly. You can just draw it first, and you can just use the vector eraser to erase the excess lines. This is very convenient. If you work on a raster layer, you have to be meticulous when erasing these excess lines. So for this vector eraser, I also assign a shortcut key, right? You can go to shortcut settings and assign a shortcut key for vector eraser. If the lines are still not connect properly, you can just hold Control and move the line, because we are working on a vector layer, so this is super convenient. The third way is duplication. I can start by drawing the X, Y, Z first, and then I can just duplicate from these three axes, because the lines are parallel to each other. There is no foreshortening in isometric grid, so this way is, I think it's even faster. I can just keep duplicate. You will understand how powerful duplication is later when I demonstrate my isometric drawing. And just like that, I just finished this even faster, and then I can just erase the excess lines. You cannot draw this fast in raster layer. This only works in vector layer. If you have updated your Clip Studio to the latest 4.0 version, you can go to View and go to Snap, and you can activate Snap to control points. So what this do is, if you draw two lines, you can connect perfectly. You can connect from one end to the other end perfectly, right? As you can see, right? This is also very useful in isometric or perspective drawing, right? You can see there is a cross in the line, and that means you snap perfectly. So this is a very efficient way to create a clean line art. Before I start my demonstration, if you prefer to experiment with sketches first, you can turn off the snapping function and draw freely on the new layer before doing all this clean line art. Or you can sketch on a separate canvas and drag the windows aside for referencing. I do not show my sketch in this tutorial because there is already a grid line underneath, so I want to keep the canvas clean without messy lines so that you can see clearly. There are 4 stages to draw a world design in a diorama style. The first stage is space design, which means we have to draw the floor plane and the wall plane first before we draw the content. So when designing a space, we want to get away with something like a box, like what you can see now. We want to avoid the space design to look something like this, because this is the most boring design you could create. To make this space interesting, I have a few tips for you. So the first one is addition and subtraction. you can add different sizes of planes, and you can subtract or add. So for example here, I want to add these two planes, so I draw it, and I can just use vector eraser to erase the unwanted lines. And if I want to subtract this portion, I can just draw a plane inside and just erase the unwanted lines. Very convenient. My second tip is you can draw any line in any direction. You don't have to limit yourself to the isometric grid. So to do this, turn off the snap to special ruler, and you actually can rotate the plan or draw in different direction. And this is where duplication is really useful in this situation, because you cannot snap to the isometric ruler because you want to draw a different direction. So you duplicate it, and if you hold shift, you select these control points from the bounding box, and you hold shift, you can extend or shorten the line without deviating. Right? As you can see, it's parallel. It's still the same direction. I don't even need the ruler to do this. The perspective, the ruler, I don't need that. I can just duplicate. And these two lines, they are parallel to each other. So, and I can erase this one. And as you can see, this plane is rotating. It has two directions, from here to here. And also, you can subtract the plan in different direction. So for example here, I trim off some of the sharp corners to make this space interesting. My third tip is you don't have to limit yourself with just four-sided squares or rectangles. You can experiment with different kind of geometric shapes. So maybe I can make this space to be something like a heptagon, something like that. My fourth tip is you can also maybe try with some curves. Maybe here I can make a curve something like that. Not every line has to be straight. If you are drawing a different theme, like something like a natural scene or a fantasy theme, you can actually experiment with curves. My last tip is ascension and descension. You can add different levels to your space design. So I can add one here. So this is like a loft, and turn off the snap function, and I can draw like a staircase here and duplicate and turn back on the snap function, and maybe I can draw a small staircase, something like this. And this is the entrance door to the room. something like that. So you can use these 5 tips to experiment with your space design. Try to make it interesting. Once you are conformed with your design, now we can draw the wall plan. So from all these intersecting points, we can draw the first vertical line, and we can just duplicate the vertical line and place them in these intersecting points from the floor plane. We can also use the same method to make the wall plan interesting. So maybe I can make this wall to be like triangular shape. Now we can do the same for the second level. We can extend a vertical line downward instead. Once you are satisfied with your space design, we can move on to the next stage, but I personally prefer to clean the line up first before I move on to the next stage. You can leave this in the final stage, but I personally prefer to clean it now. Alright, if you compare this space design with this, which one is more visually engaging? Obviously this one, right? So try to use the 5 tips I mentioned to add variation to your space design. You don't have to be as complex as this one, but it should avoid being just a box. There is no creativity in this space design. It's just boring. Once you are done with your space design, we can move on to the next stage, 2D layout. So lower the opacity of this layer and create a new vector layer, and we draw the layout of the content in this layer. What layout means is we draw the plan view of the object or the bottom surface of the object in isometric drawing. So for example, this plan view is cabinet, and maybe here I can put the bed. This is where the character sleep, and maybe I can turn off the snap ruler, and this space here can be like a working space. So this is a very long desk, and on top of this desk there will be a monitor and a PC. And I also can draw on the wall too. So maybe this is an air conditioner. I can put it here, and I can put a window, a small window here. So basically just draw the whole layout first instead of draw the whole thing one by one, the whole 3D object one by one. So the reason do this is because we can understand the spatial relationship, and we can look at the whole design and we can make adjustments. So like for example, I found out this cabinet is too big because of the door, so it should be smaller a bit. My only tip for drawing the layout is you can experiment with rotation. If you are new to this, most probably you only draw in this four direction, here or here or here or here, which is represented by the isometric grid. So you actually can draw in any direction. You don't have to get limited by the isometric grid. For example, I can rotate this cabinet to like 90 degree, something like this. I don't have to follow the grid, but I don't want to overdo it in this case because this is a modern room design. But if you are drawing other theme like a natural world design or something like a monster room, a fantasy room, you actually can experiment with a lot of rotation. But in this case, I think I'm going to do maybe this spot here. I can make this plan view to be like a triangular bookshelves, and maybe also this spot. I can make this space to be a storeroom, a triangular storeroom. My recommendation is you can turn off the grid so that you do feel like you are getting limited by the isometric grid. You can draw freely in any angle, any direction. If you don't remember every plan view, you can write them down. Now we can look at the overall design and see if we want to make adjustments or we want to change anything. So in this example, right now I feel like I don't really like the entrance door position. What I can do is I can group these layers into one group, and I can rename it as design 1, and I can duplicate this group and I can try with new design so that I can compare with the previous design. Once you are done with your 2D layout design, we can move to the next stage, simple geometric form. So in this stage, we basically just have to extrude the layout upwards from these intersecting points and turn them into simple geometric form like a cube, a rectangular, a cone, a cylindrical, this kind of simple geometric form. Now, if we want to draw this staircase accurately, we need to do some calculation. So we can create a new vector layer and we use other color. So what we need to do is basically find the starting point. So here is the starting point and here is the ending point, or the other way around. So what we need to do is we need to draw from this starting point and from this ending point, and it creates a box. So what we need to do is basically just keep dividing it. The more you divide, the more steps you get. Now we can draw the staircase outward or inward. So for example, we can lower the layer opacity first. So if you want to draw outward, this is the path. we can extend the line, and the lines are parallel to each other. So something like this. If we want to draw inward, this is the path. Something like this. We don't have to be too precise because we are not 3D software. Something like this. So in this case, I will draw inward. Since this is isometric drawing, we don't have to divide everything. We just have to find the first few steps, and the rest we can just keep duplicate it. Because this is isometric drawing, the lines are parallel to each other. There is no foreshortening. Final stage, refinement. So we can start to add more details, like we can smooth out the edges, like for example this bed and the sofa, and we basically can just draw more curvy lines. We can draw more freely. So now we have to turn off the snapping function, and we also have to turn off the vector eraser, and we can just use a pen tool and draw freely. We can also add some designs on the surface. So for example, like on the wall and on the floor. So maybe even just a few more lines. The last step we can do is to give line weight. So we can use this tool, correct line, and we can select adjust line width subtool, and we can use thicken, and we can adjust the value. So for line like this, we only want to increase the line width here. So what we can do is we can select control point, and we can select split line, and we can split the line here, and then we can select back adjust line width and increase the line weight. We also can narrow the line. So we select narrow line and we give some value, and we can narrow the detail line. I don't want to go into too many details, or this video will take too long, but basically I've already gone through the whole process. I've already shared all the tips you need to know. So if you compare this design with something I showed earlier, something like this, just a box design, which one do you find more visually engaging? This one or this one? It's definitely this one, right? This one is more interesting. So this is why a good space and 2D layout design is crucial for drawing any kind of world design. Otherwise, your design may feel boring, or in other words, monotonous and repetitive, regardless of how many details you add in. Besides this, I also covered how you can approach drawing complex objects like this office chair in a manageable way. I also talk about the benefits of drawing on a vector layer. And I also went over what specific tools and functions that you can use to speed up your workflow. So with that being said, I hope you learned something useful and apply it to your diorama style world design. Thank you for watching this tutorial and have a great day.